Hey there everyone, I'm Lauren with Bold Notion Quilting, and I wanted to share with you today my thoughts on selecting thread for a quilt top. I thought that our Christmas quilt that we're getting ready for the holidays would be a great one to share some insights on how I decide what thread is going to pair best with my quilt overall. So let's take a look. So I usually prefer waiting until my quilt is loaded on the frame, so I have the benefit of all of the light to help me showcase what kind of threads that I might want to choose. Now when I see this quilt, I often try to look at the quilt and think, is there a thread that I could pick that would coordinate with the quilt so it looks like it goes with it, it's part of the program. I don't want to just select a gray or a cream by default. So when I'm looking at this quilt, I'm seeing grays, I'm seeing browns, I'm seeing greens. Now, we go from a very light panel with white to a moderate cream to very dark browns and greens. And so we need to pick a thread, because I'm quilting it all over design, I'm not custom quilting it, that is gonna work with this quilt top and not detract from the things that are important to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is consider what is the most important thing that I don't overshadow on this quilt. Okay, for me, that's going to be the panel, but it's going to be the green tree as well as preserving the white, because if I choose a white color thread, that tree is going to get lost. If I choose a dark green color thread, that white is just going to get so cluttered, all of the words on my panel and everything are going to look gross. So I'm going to try to find something that's going to work for everything. So a lot of times when I see colors with this saturation, I'd like to pick a couple neutrals. So first we have mocha, we have biscotti. These are all glide threads. We carry nearly every single color on boldnotionquilting.com, and we carry every color of bobbin that they make in both L and M sizes, and we ship out every day. So mocha, biscotti, get a little bit lighter, we'll go to sand dune, and then we'll go to cashmere. I like to pull a line of thread. I don't need a blob of thread because that blob doesn't make a difference for me in particular, largely because when I'm quilting, I'm not going to quilt a blob. It's going to be, something that's controlled. You can see that the cream threads are really showcasing on that tree, but this one that is a little more rich and a little more golden, the biscotti, tends to play a little nicer. You can tell that the cashmere, the sand dune, and the mocha really glisten a lot on the tree. The mocha actually looks pretty nice. So the mocha and the biscotti, these two, are the ones that I think look the best on the tree from this neutral lot. Now if we go to our white fabric, okay, we're going to see that the opposite is true. The cashmere and the sand dune look the best, but the mocha and the biscotti look very golden, and they're really showing up on the fabric. They blend beautifully over the browns and the greens, whereas the lighter colors do not. Okay, and then when you get to the cream, the lighter colors look better, and then the darker ones you can see a bit, but they still look nice. So the goal would pick something that I call evenly offensive, something that's going to look just as offensive on the green as it is on the white, as it is on the cream and the brown and the green. And so I'm not sure if I'm going to pick any of the ones from this lot, but of them, I think the one that I would pick is biscotti. So we're going to set that one aside, and we're going to put the other ones away. If I'm not pleased with the neutrals, I'm going to take a look at some greens. So I picked the greens that I thought might be the right value for this quilt. You kind of have these vintage, minty green colors, and then you have these really rich colors in the tree. So it's hard to pick a color that's going to look best with everything. So let's take a look. We've got sage, which is our second to darkest. We've got aloe, which is our darkest of the greens that I've selected. Okay, we've got thyme, T-H-Y-M-E, and we also have celery, which is the lightest of all of them. So we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to see which ones look the best with the tree. So we're going to go dark to lightest. Celery is too gold, it's too bright. You can really see it shining off of the tree. The thyme actually blends in quite well. It isn't too alarming, but the value of that color and the value of the tree are not in sync. Then you have sage, which is our medium, which you can see kind of glistening on the tree. And then the sage just blends in beautifully. That looks amazing on the tree. So now let's take it to the white. The celery, this is the thyme, this is the sage, and this is the aloe. Aloe is the darkest. So of all of these, the thyme looks the best on the white because it's the lightest, but I really didn't like it with the tree. The thyme, it feels not too dark, but I'm not loving it. The sage is okay on the white, and then the aloe is really dark. That's a very dark thread on there. Then you can see that all of these colors look and mix really well with the other colors that I have pieced in here. So I'm gonna get rid of the colors that I don't like, and then we're gonna narrow down from the ones that I do. Of the two, I've got aloe and biscotti. These are both glide 40 weight threads that I'll be selecting. If I picked a 60 weight thread, it would blend in better, but 60 weight doesn't give me as many options as 40. Okay, and I like these colors that I have. So biscotti is still really bright on my tree. The sage, not aloe. The sage is not. The biscotti looks better on the white. Doesn't look as good on the brown, the green, but it looks good on the cream, and then the vintage fabric in the back. The sage, however, looks perfectly fine on the vintage. It looks like it goes well with the cream, even though I'm gonna see it. Okay, just so you can see how dark that is. And it goes well with the brown. It's not completely off-putting where you're seeing it glaring. Okay, again, good with the vintage. And then it's not terrible on the white. So it goes well with the tree panel that I have. Of all of the threads that I've gone through, I'm gonna pick the sage. It was the medium green color that is going to be evenly offensive on everything. So I'm gonna see it a bit on the tree. I'm gonna see it a good bit more on the white, but I'm gonna see it on the brown and in the cream, not so much on the green. So of all of the sections of my quilt top, the sage is gonna show up pretty evenly everywhere, and that's gonna create balance and cohesion with the thread color that I've picked. And this is a thread color that is actually part of my quilt top. So the lighter green accent fabric that I have is this color, and so this is gonna feel like it goes with the quilt. Now with the green being in the white part of the panel, I'm gonna try to then select a design that's not gonna detract from that Christmas and all the words and extra accents on there. So we'll talk about designs in another video, but the sage green is what I was gonna pick. Now, when I'm looking at bobbins, how do I select a bobbin for my quilt? My top goes from white to dark brown, so it has a huge variance of color. My backing is a very light white cream minky, so it could be a big difference in the color of this to my minky. Minky does hide a multitude of sins, so even if my tensions aren't perfect or whatever, you're probably not gonna see it. Okay, but it is my quilt, so I will eventually see it. We need to figure this out. So when I'm picking a thread color to work as a backing, I try to pick something that will work. So when I'm stitching, let me see if I can show this to you well. When I'm stitching, I will take my bobbin thread and I will audition it on my top thread. And you want to look at it as if it were a single piece of thread, because when you're stitching, that's what it is. So if this were to pull up to the top, would that hurt my eyeballs? Would it look like a tension issue as my machine's changing directions? I don't know. But when I'm looking at it, it doesn't look like there's a big enough contrast between one color and the other that it's really going to be bothersome if that thread happens to come to the other side for some reason, and vice versa. Now this is a much lighter color green than the sage that I have. This is that celery color that I didn't like for the quilt top. It was too golden. So if this does poke through on the tree, I might be in trouble. You might see it. If it pokes through anywhere else, I'll be fine. But this lighter green is going to blend better with my lighter backing. So I know that this would be a very good choice for my backing, especially if I wanted it to blend. If I didn't care if it blended, I could choose light olive. Okay, and if we put that on the cone, you can see that it's kind of a more goldy looking color. It looks really dark on the bobbin spool, but it looks a little more gold in comparison to the green. So I know that when my machine is stitching on the tree in the dark green and the dark brown, if this was to poke through to the top, you're probably going to see little gold blips of thread, and it might drive you crazy. Okay. If I went with a cream, the contrast of the tone of this color and this color is so great that you'll definitely see it if there's a little bit of a tension issue on directional changes, which is very common. No matter what you're quilting, it can happen. Okay, tensions don't always stay perfect 100% of the time. Variables happen, and those little blips when it changes direction is not enough to rip your quilting out, but it's enough to annoy you. Okay, so that's why you want to try to pick something where the tones are pretty similar. You could also pick a 60 weight, which is going to blend a little bit better. Okay, and this is like a dark gray. I could get a light gray and see if that looks a little bit better. I could try a 60 weight in a gold and see if I like that, but I'm probably going to stick to the celery and the sage because it's going to work well for my white off-white backing, and it's not going to be a big enough difference that if I do get a little bit of a tension blip here and there that you're even going to notice it or see it. Okay, so the goal is trying to minimize the variables so that as you're quilting you get better, more consistent results, and when things happen here and there, they're not going to be they're not going to upend your entire project. So just some things to consider when you're picking thread. That's kind of how I go about it. I try to pick the right value and then pick a thread for the back that's going to be even in value. A lot of times I will use this and a gray or a blue or something else that would look fine if you see it here and there, but that it would pair better with the backing fabric because backing fabrics are not always the same as the tops. So I hope that this helps you. If it does, please share the video in your Facebook groups or otherwise. Please spread the word. I'm trying to help you guys with as much information as I can with little tips and tricks here and there. Stay tuned for more videos with this Christmas quilt and every step of the way as we're preparing to get it quilted on our long arm quilting machine. I'm Lauren with Bold Notion Quilting. Check out more videos on my YouTube channel, Bold Notion Quilting, and online classes for quilting on boldnotionquilting.com. Take care and happy quilting, y'all. Bye.